Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Wednesday, January 12th. So a couple big themes of the day I have right here. We have inflation. Who knew, right? So we got a inflation report today, CPI report that everybody was watching today. Why were they watching that, or why was that important? Because really everybody is very in tuned into what the Fed might be doing in terms of raising rates. Higher the inflation goes, the more that they are, the more that they're going to be looking to raise rates quicker, right, rather than later. So, risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving any advice or recommendation. Please read the whole risk disclaimer here. So that CPI report. Here was the numbers. Just to kind of review this, because again, it was a big thing that people were looking at today. A little bit higher than expected, but already priced in. Very muted reaction to this because, again, the market was basically priced in for, had these numbers kind of priced in, right? And people were expecting, actually, I think, a little bit worse than this. Keep in mind, tomorrow we get the PPI report, right? So again, unless you've been living in a cave, right, you know that we've had inflation, right? You go to the store, about the supply chain issues as well. So these are all things that I think everybody knows, but it's a report and people want to see what the actual numbers say because of the Fed implications. So what kind of a day did we have? Well, a choppy day. Initially, the market did react to that positively, but it was kind of, in my opinion, just begging for a little bit of profit taking for the day. If you look at the 5-minute chart of the S&P, here was the initial reaction, and then after the first half hour or so, kind of a fake move, which we've been seeing definitely on some days, and then some selling pressure thereafter. My goal for the day was to basically come in and take profits on some trades, right? And then, this is what I was saying in the pre-market session. I will be a net seller on any of these gap up days, right? And then I will, when things kind of settle in, I will look for some trades, right? And that's basically what I did. Maybe a little bit too early. I try to wait. I think I waited till about somewhere between 9:45 to 10. I'll show you my trade blotter in just a second. But there was the swoosh down, recovery, and then chop for the rest of the day. When we look at this out a little further, you can see that we did get into value, but we've got a little bit of chop now going back and forth. I think that kind of makes a little bit of sense, considering the move that we've had this week. Right, we've had some, we had a decent move, a decent recovery in growth names, and just to kind of finish my thought here on the S&P, watch this 4707 level, right? That is the top of value. It would be great to see if we can hold on to that. This was a little bit in question during the day, but we did close above it. That's a good thing. I think also a good thing is after this kind of kick save of a type of candle, we did close back above, and we are back above the 50-day moving average. So that's a good thing. And I think that the S&P is in for now is in decent shape. Where it's a little bit more difficult is the Nasdaq, right, which is below the 50-day moving average. Nice to see its inside value for the month, but it could very well easily slip back out here, after a bounce, right? And I think, that was the way that I was interpreting the last couple of days, is that, hey, we kind of had an oversold bounce, and then let's kind of see what happens after that. So, for example, if you look at, various different charts, which I'm not going to bring up here, but if you look at a Shopify or a TDD or Roadblocks or a Unity software, a lot of these charts look so similar. They got crushed, right? And what happens after that happens is sometimes these names bounce. That's what we got the last couple of days, and we'll have to see if these names want to build off of that. I think, and again, I'm not making a prediction, I'm just telling you what I think, is that it'll probably be a little bit pickier and choosier in growth names, right? It will be, I think, more difficult than it was in that area of the market, given what the Fed is going to be doing, or they say they are doing. Right, so the market has changed a bit. Lastly, because I always start with the indices, IWM, which underperformed for the day, right in the middle of the value area. I can't really say much about this right now, other than it underperformed. because it's just very sideways. The level that I would continue to watch in Russell small caps, Russell futures, they are the small caps, but is 2161, or if you're looking at IWM, it's going to be 214.39. Again, this breaks, and this could really set up as an interesting short to the downside, right? The other observation, other than we're at the bottom of value at this point on the weekly chart, is that we're below all these moving averages, right? That is what's referred to, just by definition. It's a weaker technical picture when you're below all those short-term moving averages, right? So right now, I would say we're kind of hanging on by a thread right now in the overall small caps. And if you want to break this one apart and look at IWO, right, we are actually below value. So this is weak to me, and I think that's why we're kind of leaning to the downside in the overall small caps. Here's IWN as a Nancy, not as, not trading above value, but at least closer to breaking out. So again, value does look better, even though growth had better performance in the beginning of this week. Let's talk about a couple themes that were at play. Let me get off the weekly chart. All right, so let's go back to my spreadsheet here for a minute. Steel names, really interesting what's been going on in steel names, and it's not just. I would say it's I don't want to say not just, but it's mainly the international names, right? We're going to talk about the international theme in just a second, but so the steel was up. That was your best performing group for the day. And if you go across names, right, an MT breaking out, right? Valet has been acting really well. Right, so a lot of international steel names have actually been doing better, and over the last week or so. Right now, there was a nice call buyer in U.S. Steel, which again is kind of right in the market's the wheelhouse of what it likes right now, which is cheap names. I think the PE ratio on U.S. Steel is like single digits, or I think it's under 5 or something like that. So not that all important to know what the exact number is, but just to know that, this is what the market likes right now. And there was some decent positioning today in U.S. Steel calls. I did decide to take that trade. I actually saw some calls earlier in the day and decided to take that trade right at the end of the day. There was a big block of some June calls, which is fine with me, a little bit more time. So really kind of some interesting themes going on. And speaking of international, I think also emerging markets, right? Really interesting move, right? Now, this did take out this EEM chart. We've kind of risen up to another VPOC. Previously, these have been areas to take profits. Notice the one back here in September, right? We had a really nice swing higher, but it stalled, right? And then it continued to go lower. So this needs to be a turning point at this point for the emerging market. So I like to look at EEM by itself, and then I like to look at it with the relationship. This is a 10-year chart that I've got with EEM in SPY, and emerging markets have been underperforming for a while. So again, going back to what the market likes right now is cheap areas of the market. Emerging markets are pretty cheap comparatively to SPY. So we might see a kind of reversion to the mean going on, considering that 10-year pattern. And you could see, this is the first time that this has been over the 50-day moving average. Again, EEM in the numerator, SPY in the denominator, since we had back in June. So it could get really interesting, right? We've been talking a lot about the Chinese internet names, right? I was a net seller into the strength today. I kind of waited a little bit, and I had a post that I sent out on Twitter, I think on Saturday, about the Chinese internets, and maybe it might be time for them to do something. So 35.60 was the level that I talked about, right? That's also matched Virgin point of control. And then if we go over to the daily chart, I wanted to see for confirmation for the Chinese internets to get inside value, which is 37.40. So that trade worked pretty well. I actually sold it into strength. Most of what we've been seeing in this Chinese internet ETF in terms of call action has been very short term. So this has had a nice little swing here from the lows. I would love to see at this point maybe a back test of the bottom of value, and this 20-day moving average, right? And then maybe back out, right? Because I don't think even if this ends up being a nice reversion trade, I don't know if it goes exactly in a straight line, right? So here's my trade here. I took targets, 90 cents, paid 60 cents, got out of that, right? 938, okay? Besides that, right? So we talked a lot about growth and how for now it seems like an oversold bounce. We'll need to see some things. I wanted to cover just one name that I traded a lot last year, but this is a good example right now, right? This name comes out and they increase their guidance, right? They say that they're seeing really good demand for their products. And what happens to the stock? It gets completely faded. So to me, I don't know what else they're supposed to, what else a company's supposed to say. Beating and rate, coming out and saying that their numbers are going to be really good, and the stock's only up 1%. It just tells me that right now, people are not, the funds, when I say people, institutions are not coming in and buying these names right now. They're just going into other areas of the market, specifically things like steel, things like the move that we've seen in energy, which at this point is pretty overbought, right? Here's the XLE chart. But even, nat gas names are looking pretty good, right? This is the move in UNG over the last couple of days, very strong. The name that I've been in is this RRC, Range Resources. I'm trying to hit my last target up here at 2316, but certainly some other names that have been acting very well. AR, there is a ETF for this group. It's FCG, right? And this is actually breaking to new highs. So this is where the momentum is in this market, right? And it's not every day, this group or that group. Well, energy has been really strong, but FCX had a monster day too. So copper, right? Very nice, and closed almost on the highs of the day, up 5%. So impressive. Again, it kind of helps to look at the weekly chart for some of these names, right? A lot of sideways action and trying to resolve higher here in FCX. A couple other names I was going to mention too is just, other things that we're seeing in international markets. STLA, right, which we heard guidance. Here's the weekly chart in STLA. Looks pretty decent, right? First bar, going above value, right? So European car maker, right? Looks pretty solid. I know there's a lot of attention on Ford, but Ford didn't have the day that I think, a lot of call activity in Ford. I would be looking for this to break this range. Certainly could do it, but I kind of like the STLA chart a little bit better. EWJ saw some calls today. I'm not in love with this chart, but I did take a little bit of a position here because I was actually looking at this chart, right? The other thing that I didn't mention too, why are also international names kind of perking up here a little bit, besides the cheapness of them? It's also the US dollar is starting to move lower, right? So when you hold an international ETF, something like an EWJ or a European name or a China name, right? You're actually short, you have a short position in the dollar, right? Because most of those names, so if you look at the international names, for example, let's just take any international ETF, EEM, right? Take a look at how many local names are in here, right? So you're actually not holding TSM, right? You're holding Taiwan Semiconductor, the local, right? So you're actually long the currency as well. So if this continues to go lower, the US dollar as it did today, right? International names will also get a tailwind with that, right? All right, so that is it. We talked about emerging markets. One other area too is frontier markets, right? Which is, some areas like who's in frontier markets. I think Vietnam is in here. I think maybe Saudi Arabia might be in here. Yeah, Vietnam is 28% of this. Nigeria, Morocco, Bangladesh. Look at this chart, right? Coming out of this this consolidation too, kind of looks like a little bit of an inverted head and shoulders. So again, this could be a really fun year for international and emerging markets. And, we're finding those areas of strength and we're going to go after them. So I look forward to more opportunities like this. and where we're seeing metals and mining. And again, it could change, and we'll certainly be watching, and setting alerts and having and looking for strength and growth when it does emerge. But for now, I think there's a lot of good opportunities and things like this for now. All right, guys, have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.